Good evening, Brighton. So I know my ears a bit out of place, so it's a bit blustery up the back of that fire truck outside. I think the fact that there's still 500 people standing outside listening to Jeremy talk is indicative of the kind of movement we're building across this country. Yesterday, 6,000 people turned out on the streets of Liverpool. And I think they're interested in hearing something special, a message of hope, something that in British politics for too long has not been part of the narrative, not been part of the story. Just that agenda of, well, you have what you're given and that's the best that it gets. And Jeremy's actually stood up and said, well, you know what, no more. We're actually going to stand up and take what's ours. We're going to take back democracy, and we're actually going to, in this country, transform society. I'm here tonight talking from TSSA. We're a small rail union, mostly white-collar workers, but our members are under attack by Southern. They're people that work in ticket offices, they're the staff that serve you when you've got questions, they're the people that make your life easier, hopefully, as a commuter. And I want to say a little bit about railways and a little bit about Southern, because Jeremy's going to say a little bit more about that tonight, because I think it's actually indicative. The crisis on Southern, you know, a system of failed privatisation where there is no incentive for GTR, which is the parent company of Southern Rail, to actually do anything that's in the interest of passengers, because actually the government just pays them a set amount of money, and in fact all the money that you pay forwarding fares is actually going straight to the government, and the government just hand a huge chunk straight to this company. And their agenda, backed by the Tory government, is to slash staff, it is to slash services. It is actually to have more people that are paying, you know, more every single day to get to work, but actually less people on the stations, less people on the trains. Because it is an agenda, it's an agenda of the last 30 years of saying actually the economy is not one that works for everyone in this room. It's actually for everyone in the boardrooms of multinational corporations. I think the railways are, as I say, indicative of a wider problem. They are potentially one of the most green ways to travel around this country. They are something which can be a driver of economic growth in parts of the country that need investment. They are something which, if you go to any other part of Europe, they'll look at us and think, you Brits, you're crazy. You not only decided to go for Brexit, you don't even have a railway system that the ordinary people in your country can actually afford to use. When season tickets... Those very same companies, some of them, whether it's the Dutch governments, the French governments, the German governments, are here running our rail system for us. And I think that that's not right, that's not proper. Well, shouldn't we surely have people in this country designing our trains, building our trains, running them in the interest of ordinary people at a price that people can afford? I think Jeremy will talk a little bit about railways. I know it's a pet subject of his. He is a little bit of a train spotter after all. But it's an interesting story. It's an interesting story because actually that industry, the rail industry, is failing. It's failing passengers, it's failing workers, and it's only benefiting shareholders, as I said. And instead, what we want to do, and what Jeremy wants to do, and what a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn will do, is to actually transform the type of economy we've got. To say, actually, we cannot have an economy that is based on getting handouts from the City of London, hopefully getting a few crumbs off the table, but actually an economy that reinvests in manufacturing, that actually says we will create jobs in a low-carbon economy. We'll actually create millions of jobs by investing, and not be afraid to say, actually, we will put £500 billion into a national investment bank to actually regenerate and to give decent jobs, paying high wages. For too many communities that have been left behind for too long. I come from Barking Dagenham in East London. Some of you might know a bloke called Billy Bragg, and he would say that Barking was like a little bit of the north, just dropped into East London. And the reason I mention that is because at one time that community had pride It had dignity. The people that worked in Fords, whether they were men or whether they were women, were paid eventually decent wages, actually, after those women at the Ford plant took strike action. But people weren't paid in terms of 0 hours contracts. They weren't just paid the national living wage, which in itself is just another Tory aberration. They were actually paid wages that allowed them to plan for the future, maybe to even buy a home, to actually, go on holiday. It's things that I think are actually basic rights for everyone to have in this country. The ability not just have to worry when your next pay packet is coming, or maybe it's not, because if you're on a 0 hours contract, you can't do anything about choosing your own hours. Because these are things that Jeremy and Jeremy's Labour Party want to solve, to actually give dignity and to give pride back to those communities. Because I'll tell you what, if we don't do that, it's organisations like UKIP that will sweep in there and give very simple solutions to very complex problems. And so I think that story of the railways, that it's something for 30 years that has been run in the interests of the 1%, is actually a story that can be applied to so many aspects of our economy and our country. And I think Jeremy is going to put forward over this summer a plan that has policies that are serious about taking us into government, to transform not just our economy, but every aspect of society. One where people come first, and actually then profits flow from that. Because if you put people first, you can run more successful companies. I was delighted as a trade unionist in a union that represents people in all sorts of different companies across the rail sector, that he turned around and said that we would have, for every company in this country, mandatory collective bargaining for companies of only 250 employees. But that doesn't necessarily sound like the sexiest policy in the world. But what it does mean that for those companies, they are actually faced with the prospect of actually having to sit down and negotiate with their employees, the representatives of their employees, to talk about pensions and holidays and wages, and to do so in a way that is collaborative. Because actually the type of politics that Jeremy's trying to build, and that all of us in this room are trying to build, is one that is collaborative. It's about cooperation. It's about bringing people together and saying, actually, as a society, we can't just be divided and ruled all of the time. If we actually come together and negotiate in the way that trade unions have done for so many years, we can actually have better outcomes and better results. And I think underpinning everything that Jeremy will say this summer is a key message, and that message around hope. Hope for a better future. Hope for a better future for our families and for our children. Hope for a better future for pensioners. Hope for a better future for our NHS. Hope for a better future for our railways. Because actually, we are serious. And let no person in the Parliamentary Labour Party say this. We are serious about winning the general election. 100% serious. We are already mobilising more people than any British political party in modern history. We are now the biggest movement of any sort of left grouping in the whole of Europe. And I think that's an incredible thing, because what it means we've got people who can go and reach out and go into communities and work with people to give those people hope, to build together a better future. Because actually, the more people that are joining our movement, the more actually we don't have to just put up with people, in the mainstream media turning around and saying, actually, you're not serious about winning elections, you don't have any policies, you don't have an agenda. Well, I'll tell you what, this week Jeremy will put forward a policy agenda that will transform society. He will put forward an agenda across this summer, which we are already doing as part of this campaign over the summer, which will demonstrate that we are not only serious about winning power, that we not only have the ability to transform this country, that we are building an election-winning machine right here in our Labour Party, that we are going to take all the way from this campaign this summer into the general election, and we're going to kick the Tories out of number 10. And that is what So Jeremy's going to be here, obviously, to say a few words in a minute or two. But I would just end by saying this. I came from a community that had lost hope. where the BNP became the answer, where people didn't feel that anyone gave a monkeys about their future. And that was a very dark place and a very difficult place for that community to recover from. In a previous job, I travelled all around the country, to places like Stoke-on-Trent, to places like Merthyr Tydfil, to places like Sunderland, places that did actually vote for Brexit in the last referendum. And I think for us, for those people that say we're not serious about winning back those people, not winning their hearts and minds, well, I would say this: we are putting forward an economic strategy and an agenda that will give pride and dignity back to those communities, will put people in those communities into houses they can afford, houses they can own. And actually, I think that is a completely socialist thing to do, to reach out to those communities and say, no more are people going to walk by on the other side of the road. Instead, we're going to walk by on the same side as Roadview. We're going to reach out our hand in friendship and in help. And actually together, by working together, by bringing those communities forward, not actually just saying that we've got a country where we just hope for some crumbs off the table of the wealthiest, that we will actually transform society, and those people will return to voting for the Labour Party. And I tell you what, every single person in this room has a role to play in actually reaching out to those people. Because when people voted in so many of those communities for Brexit, it was a howl of rage. It was rage against the establishment. It was rage against a system that doesn't work and that is failing them. And the only solution that has ever been to dealing with those problems is the Labour Party and the Labour movement and putting ourselves back into power. So the next time it's a wet evening in Brighton, don't walk on by on the other side of the road. Think what you're going to do to help us win that next general election, because with the help of everyone in this room, we're not going to just win across the country. We can help win 3 Labour seats in this area, and we can help Lloyd win his council seat next week. Because actually, by getting out on the front foot, the agenda of hope, and the agenda of transforming our economy, transforming our society, and putting equality at the heart of that agenda, we will surely win. There is no doubt in my mind about that. So thank you for all that you do. And I know that every day when Jeremy is getting attacked in the press, he's thinking of people like you that have turned out and will turn out to campaign for him right across this country in their hundreds of thousands. Because we are building something that the establishment are petrified of. They don't want it to happen. But I tell you what, it is going to happen, and you're going to make it happen.